At what point is the private sector willing to pay to do what needs to be done in the region?
We have a diet of limitations, but not a sufficient discourse on our possibilities.
This is a critical step in our regional integration process.
Mistrust within countries is defeating us. It's not an economic matter, that is a matter for mindset.
West Indian people, we are a gem.
Let's advance our partnership together through the region.
Let us organize and do that together.
We need to ensure that there's transparency in what we do.
I do it because I love it. I'm passionate about watching things grow.
If there's a will, you will find a way to make it happen.
Let me invite the first speaker, Kieran Akal, who's the Chief Executive Officer of SMACS in Trinidad, to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. As David said, I'm Kieran Akal, and I'm the CEO and Creative Director of a tea company, West Indies tea company called SMACS. And what I wanted to do this afternoon is we're a rather young company compared to the speakers that went just before. We've been in business as a tea company for about 24 months, and I've built it on the back of a family-owned business that was in retail for 31 years in the luxury sector of the market, dealing mainly with China and porcelain that was imported from European markets into the West Indies. If I can get, I don't know this presentation, yeah. So basically 21, this morning we heard that it's been 21 years since Time for Action, but one of the things I wanted to point out is that we're actually living in a particular time where the game of business, the game of marketing, getting your product out or being seen, has changed considerably. It is vastly different from the world that we lived in 21 years ago because of things like Twitter, because of things like YouTube, Facebook, and of course the ability for people to pay and buy your goods from anywhere in the world using clearinghouses like PayPal. So we cannot actually be talking about export or getting our products seen or sold anywhere without actually also considering the fact that we're in probably the greatest change since the Industrial Revolution. This is the mark that we've developed for SMACS. We wanted to first of all create a visual identity, and again this is a snapshot of 24 months that I'm trying to give you in terms of what we've done and what we've achieved. And we set out to create a mark for the company that would immediately set us apart as a luxury brand, that would be timeless, that could work in a variety of countries or places, and that could be applied across the board to products as we develop them. And tea was only the start point for a business that we wanted to actually see as value innovation in tea. In other words, we want to change the game of tea, we want to sell it in a different way, we want to make the experience something that's new for people. The main reasons why we've done the business are really broken down into this. One is the word that's been talked about today a lot, passion. If you don't like what you do, I don't see the point in doing it. The second thing was rooted in our culture. Actually, if you look at the West Indies and you think about it from the 18th century, the arrival of all of our diaspora, Africans, Chinese, Indians, and then all of the European countries, tea came with all of these people. And in fact, the story of the collision of tea here is unique in the world. The other thing about tea that's kind of interesting is that it's a sustainable business, and right now the sustainability is a very important factor, not only sustainability, but also looking at things like the environment and how you make sure that the products that you use can either be recycled, reused, or repurposed. The third thing was that the natural resources opportunity in the Caribbean was fantastic as far as I was concerned. When you look at tea, traditional tea, which are green, blacks, and white teas, are actually falling a little bit in terms of their consumption. But what's going up, and it's growing at a bullish rate, are what we call specialty teas. These are teas that are blended with different fragrances or spices, and that therefore have a a slightly more exotic take on the original idea of basic tea. And if you look at the United States alone, we found out that between 2011 and 2015, that market's going to double from $2.5 billion to $5 billion, and it's right on our doorstep. So tea seemed like a fairly good idea to go into, and we started this project. We saw the demand that was existing worldwide, and the fact that tea was described by the UK Tea Council as being at the point today where wine was in the 1980s. Young people in their 30s upwards with tertiary level education and expendable incomes are experimenting with tea like never before. And this we saw as a bridge, the demand and the culture to be able to sell product internationally. The other thing about it, of course, is the timing, and that's related to what I'm telling you has been happening with the tea market all over the world, which is really, really quite extraordinary. What was the whole ethos behind the company? Well, this is what we came up with when we looked at the fact that we wanted to take tea leaves, which are predominantly grown in China and in India and in Sri Lanka. Of course, they've grown in about 20 or 30 countries in the world, but we don't grow it in the Caribbean. And we wanted to add that, we wanted to value innovate with it. So we wanted to take the resources that we had in the Caribbean, like cocoa. We wanted to look at nutmeg, cinnamon, vanilla, anise. We had the Pernod Ricard estate in Trinidad, hibiscus flowers, mint leaves, and citrus, of course, and how we could actually bring these into the tea to create teas that had the fragrances and the spices of the West Indies blended into them. The way that we approached this whole period of growth in the first 24 months before sort of taking a much more major leap into really much more large-scale marketing was we wanted to make sure that we used this as the basis upon which to develop our brand appeal. So from the symbol to the ingredients, I think you're beginning to understand what we've been trying to build. The other thing is that we knew that the market demand was there because the statistical information is available to anybody that cares to look into it, and as you can for any industry you want to get into. We also looked at the 4 key elements in reaching the affluent customer, as according to Douglas Holt, who wrote a very interesting book on that, myth making. And of course, in the Caribbean, it's very easy to do that. We have wonderful stories to tell about sugar, about rum, about molasses, about herbs and spices, all of the things that people came here 4 centuries ago. We have the idea of necessary condition, which is that we want to be able to create high quality products. And in this area, what we decided to do was to not go to the medium or the low level of the market, but to go to the absolute top. We cannot compete with industrial producers of tea. Our approach is more craft-like because really good tea is a craft, and it's very, very similar to the wine industry. At the level of tea that we're making, it's about the house that makes the tea and the approach that you take to it. So our idea was to make a tea that would be world-class and that could be sold anywhere. The other thing is to feed a cultural contradiction. People in large developing countries or in the bigger societies, United States, Europe, etc., lead very stressed lives, and people are looking for Zen moments any way they can, from Deepak Chopra and meditation all the way through to yoga. And tea is becoming more and more popular because it's seen as a drink that is less pressured than a coffee drink. It's something that is relaxing and calming within very frenetic lifestyles. And then last but not least, management. In forming the company, I had 3 partners that I got together with, and they weren't chosen randomly. The 4 of us combined together represent quite a large amount of experience in the creative field, legal, particularly patents, copyrights, and trademarks, business management, and finance. And so it was the 4 of us that got together to make the company, so that from the start, from the get-go, in-house, we would have a lot of the expertise that we required. All of this is according to Douglas B. Holt. We started the company actually with 7 tea blends on Valentine's Day in 2011. And by October of 2011, we had an opportunity through Caribbean Export to go to Santo Domingo. And we thought this was a great place to start. Caribbean Export was helping artisans to take their products there. But we knew from the outset we wanted to do it differently. So we made a proposal that the presentation of our tea would not be in a booth, but that we would create an experience and that we would separate ourselves from the general hall in which things were presented. And one of the things that we did was we actually set up a sort of a very relaxing tea zone outside of the general hall, exhibition hall, and created a really modern and lovely setting within which people could come, sit and chat with us in a very relaxed fashion, experience all the teas, and sample the products themselves. So we were embodying through experience what we were going after, which is a rather sleek and sophisticated presentation of the product and a great attention to detail. And we were practicing what we preach, that calmer lifestyle, a more Zen lifestyle is actually embodied in the product. By night, we held special events as well during this Design Caribbean. And we had cocktail parties and events in which we used the tea in innovative ways with alcohol companies, inviting people to the tents every evening so that they really got a sense of a brand and a product that was just more than that, but it was embodying a whole lifestyle. The other thing that we did was that this is a nice picture, we took the opportunity to create an 8th blend. We had started off with 7, but we felt that the Design Caribbean experience would be a good place to give a tea out to the delegates that were there. And so we blended and created a tea that we called Hispaniola, which was a Sri Lankan black tea that was mixed with vanilla pod, actual real vanilla pod. And so we used this opportunity to introduce an eighth tea blend. In October of that year, we got told about the Breakpoint competition. And in January of 2012, I went to Grenada with the initial set of people that were doing this competition. And we won the competition, I'm happy to say, and along with another company from Barbados in the technology sector. And what we did at this event was that I saw that there was an opportunity. The event had been very cleverly timed with another conference that was taking place there. And the reception was happening that evening for the prizes on a battleship. When I arrived, I discovered from the captain of the ship that that ship was going to be transporting the Earl and Countess of Wessex through the Caribbean to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee. And so I struck up a conversation with him, and I said to him that I would like to get my teas, which represent the West Indies, on board the battleship, and was there a way that I could get the teas as a gift to the crew? I would supply a few thousand tea bags so that they could all be sipping Trinidad breakfast and Tobago afternoon teas as they pulled into harbor. His answer was yes, and he managed to arrange it for me through the Royal Navy, and I was able to send 2,000 teas to the battleship. But there was an added advantage to that as well. I then met with the British High Commissioner in Trinidad, and we were talking about the fact that the teas, they were a little surprised that I was communicating with the Royal Navy to send teas out. And we asked whether it might be possible to present these teas as a gift to the Queen when the ship pulled into Trinidad. And through the captain of the ship, as well as the British High Commissioner in Trinidad, that actually was achieved. And I was able to present the full collection of all 8 teas to the Earl and Countess of Wessex. The result of that was a letter from the Queen, from Buckingham Palace, from her private secretary. And whilst it may seem a small thing, I can tell you that it did a great deal of good for us on our Facebook page. And we then began to get interest from hotels and other sort of high-end restaurants to ask about these teas that somehow managed to make their way into Buckingham Palace. My point with this is that when we come to events such as Design Caribbean or these fora that we hold, there are many opportunities around you, and it's a question of sort of not only coming to the forum, but also seizing the opportunities that are obviously in front of you at those times. In addition to that, we went on and applied for the Ideas to Innovation grant. And the reason for this was that I'd had an idea at that point from reading a book about really changing the game of tea. And there were 2 things that I was looking at. One was creating a tea that had a flavor or a blend that nobody else in the world could imitate. And the second thing was doing something with tea that nobody else had done. And the 2 things that came to mind when I read this book, which is called For All the Tea in China, was that we had herbal combinations or floral combinations in Trinidad in particular, one in particular, which was Angostura bitters. And I approached Angostura bitters because it has such a wonderful fragrance. And I'm very happy to tell you that we're the first people since 1824 to get access to the actual bitters botanical blend, which is a secret. And we've created a tea digestif. We will be the only purveyor of Angostura aromatic bitters tea in the world. And we launch that product next month. In addition to that, we have been working with alcohol companies and looking particularly at rum to see how we could innovate, and there'll be more on that announcement fairly shortly. But we won the competition, and as a result of that, the other sort of bits in the story that I've told you that we've built on, we started off back in Valentine's Day of 2011 in Trinidad only. We expanded into Tobago, and we're now in the United States. We are focused mainly in Miami, where we're in about 5 key restaurants that have been strategically chosen: the Design District, Midtown Miami, and Lincoln Road, which is one of the busiest roads in Miami. The restaurants that we're in are also very carefully selected. We were able to get into these markets because of the story and then because of the product. We had the follow through that when the sommeliers tasted the product, they were truly amazed that the teas were different to our competitors in the marketplace. We're not Mighty Leaf, we're not Tezo, we're not Twinings. We are the West Indies Tea Company, and when they taste the teas, smell the teas, and see the teas, they realize why we are the West Indies Tea Company. And so we've been able to get into some really prestigious places. We're also in the Virgin Islands. We are in the Ritz-Carlton there, and about 6 restaurants as well. And one of my reasons for going there was, of course, there's a huge tourism influx into the US Virgin Islands. About 80% of the cruise industry passes through there every year in 6 months. We're also in the United Kingdom. That was an interesting story. After posting the page on Facebook, we were approached by the owner of a very famous restaurant in London that has a branch here in Barbados called Daphne's. And we were asked whether we could put together, one of our teas is called Barbados Silver, and we were asked whether we could put together a gift package for this owner of this company. He owns the Elegant Resorts, they own the Elegant Resorts Group here in Barbados. And we landed up sending 300 gift packages to London that were given out to extremely influential customers at a very big event at Daphne's in London. And as a result of it, our relationship with that group is continuing to grow. And then last but not least, we're coming to Barbados, and we're going to be here, I can say happily, in October of this year. The question then is, where are we going from here? Well, as I said, we really want to value innovate, and the Angostura Aromatic Bitters Tea Blend is just the start of quite a few interesting announcements that we're going to make over the next 18 months. We've taken small, calculated steps into the market, as I've shown you, so nothing that we can't handle, but steps that are prestigious enough and good enough that what they're doing for us is they've been brand building. We know that we're going to embrace technology with both arms before the end of this year. And the reason why I've waited and didn't just jump out at having an online retail store was that I wanted to create the brand presence that would make the virtual store that much more real to people. So if you go into a virtual store and you see that the teas are being taken up at these prestigious hotels in the West Indies, they've been taken to Buckingham Palace, they've been taken up by fantastic restaurants in Miami and in the Virgin Islands and in Trinidad and Tobago, then people realize that the product is real. We are still in a virtual world when you go onto these online portals. So we built the brand and built a certain amount of brand credibility before we actually go into the online retail store, which as I said, we're about to do. The other thing was that these forays into the marketplaces have given me the confidence to understand the consumers. And it gave me a chance to look at how we could change even the packaging of teas. One of the things that we're going after, and that I'm proud to say we'll be able to do by the end of this year, is that our packaging is going to be entirely recyclable, compostable, or it can be repurposed, including what we are going to seal the individual tea bags in. It's a special type of product called PLA that's corn-based, and it composts within 3 months once it's put into the earth. So we have no staples in any of the products, and it's completely environmentally sound. The other thing that we've been doing is, as I said, looking at the packaging. And with regards to tea, one of the things I noticed is that when we tried to sell it, fragrance was very important. And so I turned away from tea sellers and tea retailers all over the world. I don't want to be Tezo. I don't want to be Mighty Leaf. I don't want to be Tavana. I want to be the West Indies Tea Company, which means a different tea company. And so I looked at it and I said, what are we really selling? Well, we are selling the color of the tea, we're selling the smell of the tea, and we're selling the taste of the tea. The closest industry to that is the highly lucrative perfume industry. So I looked towards the marketing of perfume and the packaging of perfume for the ways that we would sell the teas. And a company like Jo Malone in the UK that's been highly successful with home fragrances and candles. This is our new packaging for teas. One of the things we found is that people love miniature tins of things. So you can get sample packs with high quality loose leaf teas. We have the infuser in the box, which makes it easy for people to use them. They're not afraid to think, oh God, I've got to go and buy a teapot. They can make this in a cup. And we have a little booklet that tells the story of the tea itself. It's hugely successful for us, even on a pilot study at this point. And we sort of know where we're going to go further as we go down the line with the actual packaging designs that we use. The other thing that we've done, as I said, is we've really embraced the hospitality industry, and we're looking at the ideas of rums, and we've been collaborating with mixologists, bartenders, and liquor brands, both regionally and internationally. In the United States, we managed to get the Patron Spirits Company to take us very seriously, and we worked with Ezra Patek, their top mixologist, who developed 7 cocktails for us using their products. They're absolutely amazing, and we've been using that as part of our marketing strategy when we approach top hotels. These are called Titinis, and when you can have a pink martini or a purple martini that has a name like Grenadines Purple or Bermuda Pink, it has a certain exotic ring to it, and trust me, people on holidays in the West Indies love to order them. They're different. And so the plan is that we, as I said, we're planning now to take that next step. The story is only 24 months old. So what I'm telling you that we've done here has happened in 24 months. These are some of the brands and the marks that we're working with. There's a small cross-section of them, but the Elegant Hotels, Oceana is one of the most successful restaurants in the VI. The Van Dyke Cafe on Lincoln Road there is the busiest restaurant on Lincoln Road, one of the top 10 things to do in Florida, according to Time Magazine. The Ritz-Carlton, we started off just on their club level. We're now everything, including their hospitality gifts. The Hilton, Trinidad and Tobago, Magdalena Grand, also in Tobago. And the list is actually a little more extensive than that, but I don't want to bore you with the full list. You can find it on Facebook. Last but not least, as I said, we are really going to be going into the online presence. We know that we can market our product using an online portal. We are going to use a financial clearinghouse to be able to do that. For now, we're on Facebook. You can all like us. Please look us up, the Smacks Luxury Group, and give us an I like. Thank you very much.
Kieran, thank you very much for that. I mean, it's a fascinating contrast to the earlier panel, a very different sort of business model. And as the documents for this conference said, is there a contrast between a younger and an older generation? And I think you've sort of indicated that. Now, next speaker is Clyde McKenzie, again, very different business, founding managing director of Reggae Radio in Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. You know, listening to the presentations since this morning, you know, at one stage I was really suffering from some sleep deprivation and was hoping that I would be able to take a nap during the presentations. But they were so exciting that I couldn't manage to get a wink. Now, looking back at some of what has been said, you know, you hear recurrent themes: value creation, value added, moving up on the value chain. And the area I'm coming from is intimately bound up with the whole notion of value creation, because I'm talking about the media, and that's a critical element in the business of value creation as far as products are concerned. One of the things I found fascinating is you had these amazing stories which have unfolded over the last maybe hour or two. And I am sure these stories are not widely known across the region. And that, in my mind, is the result of an absence of the kind of exposure regionally that these success stories should be given and are not given. Many times in this region, we tend to promote things that are negative, feeding into the whole idea that nothing good is coming out of the Caribbean. I mean, when you hear these stories, you really take heart and you really want to say, let us really put out these stories so that other people can hear them, because they're stories of inspiration. Now, I am in the business of media and music, and part of my concern has always been the reluctance of traditional exporters to associate themselves with the cultural sectors. And what do I mean by that? We have artists going into different parts of the world daily from this region and within the region. And our products are not often going with them. Our businesses, traditional businesses, manufacturers and so on, are not using the opportunities presented by our cultural essence and the value that the culture really brings. And I was heartened when I listened to the bank story and some of the SMAC story, because it spoke to the whole idea of bringing the culture to bear on our productive and marketing process. These things were bringing the unique features of the Caribbean to bear on what is happening. Now, I'm involved in a number of ventures, and one of them is audiovisual production. Because I think that the audiovisual medium provides tremendous opportunity for the promotion and exposure of not just our cultural products, but all of what we can produce in the Caribbean. I always like to point out that in many instances, we tend to work in silos. And so we always seem to like to work in splendid isolation from each other, even when things are related. And I see the audiovisual sector as a vehicle for really opening markets for our products, be it tourism, be it manufacturing, and be it our music. It is no accident that reggae music was introduced to the United States through The Harder They Come. The motion picture business is helpful in value creation. Now, one of the features of the product I have called Feel Choice, which actually in this particular instance, I'm going to ask that just a little piece of a program that we have, which is basically a music-based travelogue. What it does is it leverages the value of Jamaican music internationally. And it is a travelogue because it goes across Jamaica and it features outstanding scenes and outstanding places across the island. And listening this morning to the presentation from the Honorable Mr. Pinda from the Bahamas, it struck me that oftentimes in our Caribbean experience, we are competing with each other in terms of trying to see who can export this to whom, interregionally. But he spoke about the idea of collaborating in terms of exporting to the outside. And it struck me that a simple program like Feel Choice, which is aired in the United States on CIN and SEEN, it's aired in Canada on the Rogers Network, it is going back again in Britain and Africa on Ben TV, and of course it's aired in Jamaica. I am saying that I see no reason why, for example, the program could not come down to a Caribbean territory and be shot here, still having Jamaican music as the driver behind it, and then it is exported, and whatever products, be it beer or tea or whatever, because what you have here is an opportunity to move into the diasporic markets and also to move in that extended market which the diaspora facilitates. And I just want, if you could just give, I know there are some technical problems, but if you could just give a little bit of a clip from an episode from FIWI Choice.
So if you just turn on your TV, you're late. But anyways, welcome to the baddest Top 10 chart show on television, the Captain's Bakery FIWI Choice Top 10 chart show. I'm your countdown diva, Amita. Today we're appearing in the one and only Mystic Mountain in Ocho Rios. But right now we're about to go bobsledding, and guess what? You're gonna get the action right here on camera. We're gonna have it on footage, me bobsledding. And we're off, people. Here comes a jump, here comes a jump! But guess what, Tanya, I have a question for you. How do you come up with the concepts of your songs like White Lie and, you know, the rest of them on your own?
I watch people business and I write songs about them. No, I write about some of my business too, but I will not tell which is my business and which is just observation from other people's business. Right now, we're going over to Sasha Bling with a scoop. She's a scoop lady, and we're going to get the scoop from her right now. We'll go over to her.
That is just a piece of what the program is. It's exported to a number of territories outside of Jamaica. We have plans to franchise the program because it's a music chart, among other things. And one of the things we believe is that you can go into other regions of the Caribbean with the program and they have their localized version of it. That's one. But we also, as we said before, there's no reason why we couldn't come to other territories across the region and do the program, with a Jamaican theme as well. We have also, I was listening, and a very important aspect of brand development is, how we deal with brand extensions. And part of what we are doing is we are extending the FIWI line in the sense that we're not only looking at syndication and franchising as we spoke of, but then we have these brand extensions. So you're going to have other programs that are coming and are related. We've had others. Grace was with us with a feature called FIWI Food, and we have a number of FIWI things: FIWI Fashion, FIWI Health, and it's a whole suite of programming that really fits into a channel, and that is a lifestyle channel which is promoting the Caribbean experience. So the whole idea is to capitalize on the Caribbean essence, to capitalize on the Caribbean experience, and to use this as a vehicle for promoting Jamaican culture, for promoting regional culture, and for promoting regional and Jamaican brands. Now, I was listening earlier today, and it struck me that, there are some serious limitations with regards to how we deal with this whole value creation thing. Because the major problem that is facing us in the region is that for most sectors, we're primary producers. That is, we basically provide the raw material and others get involved in the more lucrative segment of the value chain, and they really make most of the money. And I hear a lot of discussions about how we can develop and process and add value. But the media is a significant part of this whole business of value added. I'm looking at FIWI being involved because we are also putting on an award show. We're in discussions. We're doing a regional award show based in Trinidad, because that will have the broadcast linkages that will make it not only something that is visible in the Caribbean, but also outside of the Caribbean. And I think that is where we have to focus our attention. How do we use media to create value? A lot of us are thinking that, you know, there are tremendous opportunities being provided for marketing through new media. I know that new media is a valuable tool for promotion, but a lot of people are thinking that it can be used exclusively. My own understanding from the music industry and from other related industries is that new media is not so great in terms of reaching markets. It is great in terms of reaching individuals. The other thing is, given the lowering of the barriers of entry, the information clutter is so significant outside there that gimmickry is the way and the means through which you're going to have to gain attention. I mean, people will cite Gangnam Style as this wonderful example of what can happen when you use new media. First of all, Gangnam Style is not an exclusively new media phenomenon. It is a result of that hybridized relationship between old and new media. And again, Psy was able, through gimmickry, to demonstrate that he can jump out of the pack because the dance and everything was very contagious, and it worked. My advice is that we in the region need to be focusing more on our audiovisual sector. We need to be investing in our audiovisual sector. Minister Hilton is here, and I know he's passionate about a number of things. And I'll just mention 3 of them because we have had intense discussions on them. One is the very question of how do we value intellectual property assets for the purposes of collateralization. It is critical. So we are going to have to be able to say to the people in the financial sector, look, I have a catalog of work here, maybe audiovisual, musical, literary, whatever. But here it is. Can you advance me some money to do what I need to do based on the value of these assets? We have serious deficiency in our region with regards to the valuation of these assets and properties. Our financial sector is not equipped. I mean, I don't need to go around any corners to say that. We are just not equipped. And also, the legislative architecture across the region is not particularly accommodating for some of these innovative approaches to how we use things like intellectual property assets. We're going to have to look also across this region in how we treat the whole question of innovation and the allowance of people making mistakes. The legislation across this region is inimical to people's making mistakes because it stigmatizes business investors who make mistakes. We don't have the appropriate bankruptcy mechanisms to allow our people the opportunity to make mistakes. That is going to be critical in the whole developmental calculus. And the other thing is we have to be reminded that the creative and the cultural sector in particular, they're random in nature, stochastic. And we have to appreciate that the traditional modalities for financing are inappropriate for ventures that are related to these fields. And so a big move is that we're going to have to fashion the kind of funding arrangements, venture capital, and all of that, which will allow us to finance and fund ventures of that kind of creative and cultural nature. And finally, about 7 years ago, I proposed in Jamaica that we should look to the diaspora as a source of investment for the floating of what I was thinking was a bond issue that would have financed, for my own purposes, I was saying, cultural ventures. And I don't see any reason why something like this could not be done on a regional level. I mean, the Caribbean has a bigger diaspora than Jamaica. The fact is that we have a situation in which, going back again to what Minister Pinder spoke of this morning, there's no reason why a person in Guyana can't invest, for example, in a festival in Jamaica. Or there is no reason why a beer in Barbados cannot use Jamaican programming to reach the United States or to reach Canada or to reach Britain. What I'm saying, and what I thought he was saying, is that the integrative process can be used in a way in which this piece of the value chain resides here in Barbados, another piece resides in Trinidad, another piece resides in Jamaica, and reintegrate the process, and we can come up with significant value. I think we have to turn our minds to the question of access of funding, because it's critical to everything that we discuss here. I mean, when you talk about negotiating all of these fabulous deals, all it is that you're opening the door, but if you don't have anything to come in, it is meaningless. We're going to have to find the kind of modalities to fund particularly culture and sports, areas in which we have such great comparative advantage. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.